Hello fellow entrepreneurs! Welcome to my channel where I read and summarize books relating to being a better entrepreneur. I've met no one who I thought was wise who didn't read. I believe reading is essential for those who seek to rise above the ordinary. So today, we'll be learning from Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand. Clarify your message so customers will listen. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. We all enjoy a good story. Stories have always played a central role in human life, from the recitation of epic poems in Homer's time to modern-day binge-worthy web series. And whether you prefer novels or serialized podcasts, blockbusters or flash fiction, stories have most likely shaped you into the person you are today. So, if you're trying to sell a product, how can you use stories to your advantage? Let's learn from Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand. Part 1. Your marketing message must be clear and relevant. If you had to think of a quick way to boost sales, you might think, bingo! We have a new website! However, no matter how flashy and sophisticated your new website is, it will fall short if you don't use language effectively. So, how can you use this to your advantage? You'll need to create a clear message that presents your brand in a way that leaves no room for ambiguity. The message should convey 3 things. 1. Who you are. 2. What you do. And 3. How you do it. Also, why should a customer choose you over someone else? Potential customers will struggle to understand what you're offering if your message isn't clear, and they'll quickly go elsewhere. Let's say you run a painting company and a customer comes to your website looking for a new coat of paint for his home. You could be the Michelangelo of house painters with the most slick website ever, but it won't matter if your website doesn't clearly state that you paint houses. The best things to consider when crafting the perfect message are your customers' survival-related needs. What is your product or service going to do to help them survive and thrive? Let's turn to psychologist Abraham Maslow to get you in the right frame of mind. He came up with a hierarchy of human needs, ranking them in order of importance to our survival. Food and water come first, followed by safety and shelter. Our need for companionship is third on the list. We require both friends and partners in order to reproduce. Finally, we seek to meet larger needs. These requirements can be used to help you fine-tune your message and entice customers. Most of us want to be accepted, find a partner, and be part of a tribe. And we all need to eat and drink. So use that knowledge to explain how your product will help customers meet those needs and thrive in life. Part 2. The StoryBrand 7-part framework. Have you ever been so engrossed in a book or movie that a few hours flew by in what seemed like minutes? A good story is like a net. It catches and holds our attention, which is usually fleeting. We won't forget a story once we've been caught up in it. The difference between a well-told story and a jumble of tweets, news feeds, video clips, and comments is that a story is a collection of organized data. That is why we enjoy listening to stories and why they are memorable. A melody is similar to a story. You won't remember the erratic honking of cars or the random chirping of birds if you walk outside and listen to them for 5 minutes. However, because music tends to follow rules and recognizable patterns, a melody can stick in the mind after just listening once. As a result, turn your message into a story to make it as memorable as a melody. You should use the StoryBrand 7-part framework, or SB7 framework for short, to make this process easier. The SB7 framework is based on the power of story and is organized around the 7 most common elements of a story. Number 1, a character. Number 2, has a problem. Number 3, and meets a guide. Number 4, who gives them a plan. Number 5, and calls them to action. Number 6, that helps them avoid failure. And number 7, and ends in a success. Of course, we'll get deeper into it, but here's a quick rundown of how this story structure works. The character wishes for something, but it is difficult to obtain. That's the problem. A guide appears when the character is on the verge of giving up. This guide lays out a plan and encourages the character to act. The character then avoids failure and obtains the object of his or her success. So, now you have a general idea of how the story will unfold. This arc will be followed by your own story-based brand message, which will become a StoryBrand brand script. With this script, you'll be able to capture and hold your customers' attention. So let's get started with the SB7 framework's first module. Part 3. Your customers are the protagonists of your story, so focus on their one desire in particular. A hero is present in the most memorable stories. Luke Skywalker is a character in the Star Wars franchise. Frodo is a character in The Lord of the Rings. Jason Bourne is in The Bourne Identity. The customer, not you, is the hero of your brand story. The first module of the SB7 framework is character, and just as the customer is always right, so is the customer the character. Your story should be solely focused on your customers' needs and desires. This way, when they need something in the real world, your story, and thus your product, will come to mind quickly. Here's an example of how not to do things to emphasize the importance of making the customer your main character. Once upon a time, a luxury resort failed to focus their story on their guests. The resort's website featured photos of the front desk and restaurant, followed by a long text about the resort's story. This was, without a doubt, a mistake. Their message was hazy at best, and it made no intention of how it could meet customers' needs and desires. So, the hero of an effective brand story is the customer. However, in order to truly engage customers, you must also target their desires, or more precisely, one specific desire. It's pointless to list all of the services you provide. It will confuse your customers and make it difficult for them to understand how your message is relevant to their needs. Have you ever wondered what happened to that self-centered resort? Finally, someone realized that customers just wanted to unwind. As a result, drastic changes happened. The website was completely redesigned, and the few remaining photos included elegant towels, a relaxing bath, and a massage session. The text was also removed, and the resort's message was reduced to a single line describing what the resort had to offer: relaxation and luxury. Part 4. To engage your customer, focus on their villain, or their internal problems. Do you have a knack for solving problems? When something needs to be fixed, whether it's a suboptimal work process or an unproductive pattern in a romantic relationship, some of us are at our sharpest. If you're one of these people, the SB7 Framework's second module, which focuses on how your product or service solves customer problems, will be ideal for you. Surprisingly, simply mentioning your customers' problems will pique their interest in whatever you have to offer. People want to be understood, and when you communicate that you're aware of their problems, you're also demonstrating understanding. In most stories with a hero, there is also a villain, an evil character who the hero must defeat. This is why when telling your customers' stories, you must make their problem the villain. Take, for example, that you're promoting a time management app. Casting distractions as the villain is your best bet. By demonizing all things that waste time, for example, by explaining how procrastination can destroy a relationship, you turn each distraction into a mini-villain, and it's these villains who make up the problem your product helps to solve. Remember that your customer is the hero, and every hero needs a villain to defeat. However, the villain does not have to be an external issue. Internal issues are frequently just as, if not more, pressing. Internal frustrations, such as the feeling that you don't have enough time for yourself, are examples of internal problems. Companies frequently sell products that are solely concerned with the external world. If you work as a house painter, you provide an external service, house painting. Even if your product is external, you should market it to address internal issues. Keep in mind that a customer will not choose you over the competition simply because his house requires painting. A promise to solve an internal problem, on the other hand, might persuade him to choose you. So make fun of his embarrassment at owning the ugliest house on the block, and then show him how to defeat that villain by hiring you. When external products are combined with internal problem-solving solutions, they sell much better. Part 5. Empathize with your customers while also being authoritative. Almost every story has a hero who gets himself into trouble at some point. Luke Skywalker, for example, loses his hand and is forced to confront the dark side, and Frodo has to bear the dreadful burden of the One Ring. But just when things appear hopeless, along comes a guide, someone who imparts wisdom, offers support, and helps the hero get back on track. Yoda, the little green creature full of wisdom and Jedi skills, is Luke's choice. Gandalf, the brusque old wizard, is Frodo's mentor. A guide, on the other hand, can take any shape. It could be a football coach who instills self-confidence in a young player, a teacher whose lessons inspire her students to see the world in new ways, or a business leader who leads his team to unprecedented success. Your company is the guide in your brand story, that wise and supportive figure who assists the customer in overcoming life's challenges. You'll need to exude two qualities to effectively and convincingly present yourself as a guide: empathy and authority. The importance of empathy cannot be overstated. It not only shows that you understand your customer's pain and frustration, but it also establishes a trusting relationship. Your advice will never be taken seriously unless you have a strong relationship with your customers. Equally important is authority. You don't have to be overbearing or condescending to establish authority now. It only takes a consistent display of competence. Take, for example, the marketing firm Infusionsoft. It claims that 125,000 users are happy with its service on its website. The company's marketing software has also received awards. Infusionsoft establishes its authority by demonstrating its competence through the use of both numbers and testimonials. It's time to start working on the plot now that you've established the main characters in your brand story. Part 6. Create either a process or an agreement plan to ensure customer purchases. Let's pretend you've done an excellent job of positioning yourself as your customer's guide. They have faith in you as well as your authoritative judgment. Even if you succeed in doing so, there's no guarantee that they'll buy your product. Committing to a purchase is risky, so you must make the process easier by creating a strategy. Consider this scenario. Your customers are on the bank of a creek. They want to cross, but there isn't a bridge and no one wants to get wet. So, what exactly do you do? So, you throw a few large stones into the water, and your customers can hop from one stone to the next. Your strategy is made up of these stepping stones. Aside from metaphors, here are some concrete planning guidelines. Either show your customers how to do something or make purchasing your product completely risk-free. A process plan is the first method, which involves showing your customers what to do. It demonstrates to customers how to purchase or use your product, reducing the risk of customer confusion and increasing the likelihood of customer retention. Assume you run an online store that sells storage systems, and someone comes to your site looking for a system for his garage. He won't be able to tell if your system will fit his garage, or if he can put it together himself if there isn't a clear process plan. To avoid misunderstandings, be as specific as possible about the procedure. Customers might be given the following instructions on your storage system website. 1. Determine the size of your space. 2. After that, order parts that fit your space's dimensions. And 3. Finally, in just a few minutes, you can install the system yourself using only basic tools. The second method is known as an agreement plan, and it entails providing customers with an agreement that eliminates their fear of purchasing your product. For example, CarMax, a used car dealership, had to devise a strategy for dealing with customers who were afraid of haggling with a pushy salesperson. As a result, they made 2 promises: no haggling, and no buyer will be left with a vehicle that does not meet their needs and standards. Part 7. Give your customers either direct or transitional calls to action. Congratulations! Your story is nearly finished. However, there is still some work to be done before you can sit back and relax while the clients pour in. Your customers must be challenged to take action. Remember that the average consumer sees about 3,000 advertisements per day, so you'll need to stand out if you want to be noticed. Customers will simply ignore you if you wait nervously for attention. But what constitutes an effective prod to action? Making a direct call to action is one tried and true method. Customers are challenged to make a purchase with direct calls to action that are bold and clear. You've probably seen those buttons that say, "Get it now," "Register," or "Buy now." They're found on almost every website that sells something, and for good reason. They're very effective. They should also be featured on your website, ideally more than one of them, and in multiple locations, so that customers encounter multiple calls to action as they browse your site. A transitional call to action is another option. In contrast to a direct call to action, which encourages customers to make a purchase, a transitional call to action aims to maintain a friendly relationship with customers, even if they decide not to. It's to make sure they think of you instead of the competition the next time they run into the problem your product solves. This is usually accomplished by providing something memorable but free, such as an invitation to attend a series of webinars or, if you're a web designer, a link to download a PDF that explains the fundamentals of web design. Customers remember such gestures, and they'll be more likely to come back to you in the future. Part 8. Remind your customers of what they will lose if they don't get your product. While it's true that everyone loves a happy ending, it's the possibility that a film, book, or web series will end badly that keeps us hooked. We stay glued to the page or the screen because we fear the worst, that the hero will fail or perish in the end, that the character we've grown to care about will fail or perish. You should use this fear of failure in your brand story because a similar fear guides our purchasing decisions as well. Daniel Kahneman, a behavioral economist, published a paper in 1979 on what motivates people to buy. In this paper, he observes that, on average, people are more dissatisfied after a loss than they are satisfied after a gain. Losing $1,000, for example, will be more dissatisfying than winning $1,000 will be. When it comes to purchasing decisions, the same rule applies. We'll be more concerned with avoiding a loss than with gaining a profit. This means you should make the drawbacks of not purchasing your product or service crystal clear. Assume you're the CEO of an insurance firm. Because the whole point of insurance is to protect against potential losses, it makes sense to run an ad campaign that highlights those losses, whether it's a burglary, a fire, or an accident, and demonstrates how your clients will be protected if they buy your insurance. Let's pretend you're a financial planner. You'd like to demonstrate how, unlike other financial service providers, you'll always meet with clients in person. You'll be the one to guide them through the maze of investment strategy and make sure they don't get stung with hidden fees. People are afraid of being duped out of their money, and implying that most financial advisors will try to dupe them will increase the likelihood that they will choose you. Let's move on to the final module, success, now that you know how to leverage failure. Part 9. Make a vision that your customer wants to work toward. By sharing a vision, you can show your customers how your product will change their lives. Because there is always the possibility of a tragic ending, stories are engrossing. No one, however, wants their own story to end in tragedy. That's why, after laying out the risks of not purchasing the product in front of your customers' eyes, you should lay out the happy ending your product provides. Success is that happy ending. Nike, for example, doesn't just sell high-quality athletic footwear and apparel. It promises an entire way of life, one that is full of inspiration, drive, and success. So how do you create a vision that your customers will want to work toward? There are 3 strategies to consider. The first is about social standing. Have you ever seen a movie where the sweet and nerdy guy falls in love with a beautiful and popular girl against all odds? This story intrigues male nerds all over the world, not only because the guy gets the girl, but also because his social status rises. As a result, you should make every effort to make your brand or product synonymous with prestige. Selling a premium membership with benefits not available to other members is a relatively simple way to accomplish this. Completeness is the focus of the second strategy. We've all seen a movie or read a book about 2 star-crossed lovers who finally overcome their romantic obstacles and live happily ever after. Though unoriginal, such endings are still satisfying because they promise fulfillment, which is exactly what your product should do. Even if all you sell is dish soap and the only completeness you can provide is a clean dish, you should be able to explain how your product will improve your customer's life. You must emphasize that without this particular soap, no one can feel complete. The third strategy focuses on accepting oneself and realizing one's full potential. One way to accomplish this is to assist customers in accepting themselves as they are. American Eagle, a clothing company, excelled at this. They advertised with photos of regular people, pimples, stretch marks and all, rather than using models and airbrushing their bodies. This was not only creative marketing, but it was also a step towards self-acceptance for anyone who saw the ads. And if that isn't a happy ending, or a vision we should all support, it's hard to know what is. This wraps up the summary from the book, Building a Story Brand. Clarify your message so customers will listen, by Donald Miller. Thank you for sticking out through the very end of this video. Nothing helps out my channel more than y'all watching the entire video. These videos take a long time to make, and is a labor of love. If you would like to contribute by buying me a cup of coffee, I'll leave the link below along with a link to this book. And as always, if you liked this video, please like and subscribe and watch these videos that might pique your interest. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, keep reading.